explore Yaddle's path and 4 other spiritual poems. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi. Today's first poem, Chained. Hope and doubt, desire and dread, pulling and pushing. This is the fundamental duality that keeps us chained to stress like a dog on a leash. Today's second poem, Disinterest. There is a special type of anger we could feel when an authority figure whose job it is to protect us does not care to do so. Many years ago, as I shambled with my canes, a man attacked me, a disabled monk, in broad daylight before witnesses. When the police arrived, they seemed disinterested in taking anyone's statement and explained that if they did not see the attack, then it did not happen. I do not know why I failed to speak to their field supervisor. More than 3 decades ago, I was involved in a traffic accident. When the police arrived, it was discovered that the other driver had no identification and had seemed to be unable to speak English. The Los Angeles Police Department did not call a translator, of which they had plenty, ignored that he'd been driving without a license, and soon themselves drove off. A Neil Gaiman short story concludes with a grandmother participating in a stage performance of a traveling illusionist. She stepped into the box, disappeared, and after the show, the magician no longer seemed to speak English, and the grandmother was nowhere to be found. Why did the characters not pitch a fuss? Why did the characters not physically detain the traveling illusionist and call for the constables? Did they know the constables would not help? Did they know the constables did not care? There is a special anger we could feel when those whose job it is to protect us are unable or unwilling to do so. Today's third poem, Teacup. A tale is told of a scholar come to visit a yogi. The yogi bids the scholar sit, sets a teacup before his guest, turns his attention to the cup, and begins to pour the tea. Having filled his guest's cup to the brim, the yogi stops pouring, turns his gaze to the visiting scholar, smiles enigmatically, returns his attention back to the scholar's cup, and pours in yet more tea. Overflowing, the hot tea spreads across the table towards the tender lap of the visitor, who, scrambling to avoid getting burned, races to stand up, almost knocking over the table. Like the teacup, the yogi explained, you come to me with a mind full of preconceptions to which you enthusiastically clutch. And just as a full cup has no room for additional tea, likewise your mind has no room for my teachings. It is good to be aware of our preconceptions and prior learnings, but if we are to truly benefit from additional meditation training, we must exercise the courage and humility to set aside both prior learnings and preconceptions, thus making of our mind an empty teacup ready to receive instruction. It could be a sobering prospect to strive to teach an old dog new tricks, and I'm reminded of the gospel passage that reads, "Do not put new wine into old wineskins, lest the wineskin burst and the new wine be lost. Rather, put new wine into new wineskins." Do we have the courage to assume the attitude of new wineskins, soft, pliable, and free of the rigidity that comes from certitude? For the test of new teachings is not how they compare to old teachings, but rather the results they generate when we practice them twice daily for 6.5 consecutive days. Today's fourth poem, Peace. He hung his head, and as he sighed loudly and slouched forward, it looked as if he was caving in upon himself. If I was a better Christian, I would have more self-control, he lamented. Au contraire, I offered. You, by yourself, do not have the strength to fight the drives of your brainstem, nor were you designed to. For he who built you crafted your brainstem to keep you alive, and right now it is just confused. But that does not make you a bad person, any more than contracting a head cold and sneezing could make you a villain. Remember how it is written in the Old Testament that when the king of Assyria sent a threatening letter to Hezekiah, the king of Judah, recognizing his inability to adequately defend his subjects, in humility placed the threatening letter upon the incense altar. Likewise, you could use your awareness of your brainstem's more destructive drives to give them to God. Now, the question remains, what is the method by which you could most effectively give these drives and your weaknesses to God? Our first clue is found in the book of Romans when we read, "The Spirit of God dwells within you." So by simply, passively, vulnerably noticing your destructive drives while silently and mentally reciting the preposition "this" as you breathe in, you, like King Hezekiah, are offering your weakness to God. Our second clue is found in the book of Psalms, where it is written, "Be still before the Lord and wait." So by silently and mentally reciting the word "yes" as you breathe out, while relaxing as best you can, you could find yourself letting go and letting God. And the great irony is that this great weakness could thus serve to increase your experience of what the book of Ephesians described as the peace that passes all understanding. Is that not why Paul wrote, I rejoice in my weakness? Today's fifth and final poem, Yaddle's Path. Come, let us leave patriarchy's Sith-like existence of competition and cruelty, and instead embrace matriarchy's path of cooperation and compassion. That, like Jedi Master Yaddle, love could be the defining trait both of our lives and our deaths. For it is only through the practice of love and letting go that life finds its ultimate meaning. Let us conclude with a simple call to action. This podcast will never have any advertisements, so support us monthly on PayPal and like us on your podcast service to help others find us just as you found us as well. If meditation has felt impossible, boring, or just out of reach, you are welcome to register at buddhajoy.org for the next series of live online meditation class webinars that meet once a week.